This is Python's Paradise. This is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena, straight out of Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, but rocking a beautiful Toronto background behind me because, well, I'll be there at the end of August or towards the end of August for Fan Expo. So that will be awesome. But in the meantime, here we are at the end of July, July 31st, 2025, and we are celebrating. We are celebrating the 45th anniversary of Caddyshack. Now, in 1980, when that came out, I would have been 8 years old. I did not see Caddyshack in theaters because, well,
Oops.
yeah,
Ah,
I
R-rated.
would have learned things that I would have eventually learned while watching Friday the 13th Part 2. But nonetheless, I would rent Caddyshack later in life and fell in love with it. It's a strange story for me about Caddyshack when the first time I seen it, I didn't like it when I first saw it. But what had happened is I had to really think about something. Loved Rodney Dangerfield and Back to School, loved Chevy Chase, loved Bill Murray. I was like, why am I not liking Caddyshack? Maybe I just had an off day. So I went back and watched it again, rented it and watched it again. And then I got it and I loved it. It was like going on a vacation to the country club and all these interesting people. And I have since championed this as one of my favorite comedies. Folks, I have a guest on from Caddyshack today, folks. Yes. Yes, we got him on here today after he picked up some blood.
I did. Still trying to get it up. It's like Macbeth. I thought it was, a comedy, but who knew?
Yep, after he had to pick up all those gumballs after destroying that one gumball machine. Yes.
Actually, someone else did because the first time we shot that, the fucking, excuse me, I can say fuck.
Go
The,
ahead.
the thing hit the ground, smashed into a million pieces, and I think they ran out of film. I think the film, whatever, the film roll ended or whatever the hell technology was in 1979. And so they had to start it again and get the, fortunately they had more gum than one gumball machine. But yeah, so I, anyway, that wasn't that interesting, but I just remember that. It's like,
Folks,
ah,
you hear him passing the blame off to somebody else? We all know who really broke it.
let's take a direction. Exactly.
Folks, I give you Angie himself, which I think is a strange name for a guy, but nonetheless, we'll go with it. Angie himself, Peter Berkrot.
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 People kind of
Screwed
fix
it up
that.
right when I said it.
People always try to make it prettier.
What kind of name is that? What's it? Where's it originate?
Well, from my dad,
Hmm.
just that's not the end. I could have just said that. My father's side is a little less because my mother did all the talking for everyone. I can tell you everything about my mother's side, my maternal side. My father's dad died when my father was 11. He had complications from I don't know if it was what would it have been, mustard gas or something. He fought in the trenches in World War One, World War
Hmm.
Two, or two, one. Sorry, one. Um, uh, so my father was never all that. It's there are certain families, especially Italian families, Jewish families, ethnic families. The mother does all the talking, the father does all the pretend listening. So I didn't get a lot of background, but my dad's mom was German, Rose Gluck, which my mother always, we're Jewish, so she was, oh, Rose Gluck mitted Imlaut whenever they had a fight, and he had a Mercedes and she would, oh, Mercedes. So that was my cultural upbringing. But my father's father, we believe, was Hungarian, Austrian, that area. So Berkrot, I've always wanted to do Ancestry or one of those, but Berkrot goes back only, as far as we know, to maybe Hungary, maybe Austria, and that's as far as we've ever really gotten. The other side is all, Ukrainian, Russia, running from the Russians, escaping the Cossacks, all that good old-fashioned pre-Superman, you know, origin story stuff.
There you go.
So it's just one of those names. There aren't that many of us.
Well, it's just like there's not many guys I know named Angie either. I found that interesting. Where is there a like is Angie generally a male name? Am I missing there?
Italian kid from New York, well, not New York, and these guys were theoretically from Nebraska. Nobody knew that. That's where they were
Okay.
supposed to live. Angelo, Italian kids.
Oh, what? Now I get it. Okay. Angie short for Angela. Okay.
Angie is usually the hot Italian girl, with the long black hair, is just like really chewing on gum. But Angie is a short for Angelo.
Okay, because your last name in the film was Nunzio there, or Denunzio, excuse me.
Tony, Angie, and Minerva was Joey. So Joey was probably Joseph and Angelo and Anthony. So
Okay, now I get it. Now I get it. I didn't want to sound prejudiced. It's just that's something that's always stumped me. I don't have any Caddyshack t-shirts, but I am wearing National Lampoon's Animal House because I
I
do know
did.
that Harold
I did.
Ramis and Doug Kenny were both
Uh,
involved with that.
yeah. Well, Harold wasn't as involved. I don't know what Harold did with Animal House. Harold didn't direct it.
He
He
was
was.
associate producer or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Caddyshack, I think, was Harold's first directorial.
Hmm.
Um, uh,
Yeah, I think he was involved in the writing or something with Animal House, but his name was on it, and of course Doug Kenny played Stork.
Doug is brilliant.
Everybody thought Stork was brain dead.
Yeah, well, that's how Doug liked it. He was just so proud of being. Doug once said to me the thing that he was most proud of was his SAG card. He was so proud that he got to be in a movie and got his union card. And I thought that was so cool. I mean, he was my hero, not only as a person once I got to know him, but as the guy from National Lampoon, from Harvard Lampoon, from the National Lampoon Radio Hour. I mean, he was the brains behind the Lord of the Rings uh, parody. And when we met, he was probably the humblest, kindest, least judgmental. He's got a funny rap because he went through a lot of stuff, but greatest guy in the world. Absolutely the greatest guy in the world.
I felt so bad when I heard about how he passed. And
I,
what saddens me is that apparently he did not like Caddyshack. It was went away from his vision, and he never got to see what it became.
yeah. Um, well, yeah, I mean, he would have done more great stuff. I mean, he was the comic essence of Animal House, of Caddyshack. I mean, there were funny movies after that, but most of the really sick, funny stuff, other than the stuff that Bill Murray improvised, and there's a lot of improvisation, obviously, from these guys. But um, he was very unhappy with how it turned out because none of us knew what was going on. To me, Harold Ramis was daddy. He was the solid dad. He had Violet, his daughter, who was only like 18 months old at the time, and his wife was there, and he was like the dad, and we were all maniacs. And when in fact I found out later that he had no idea what he was doing either. Nobody really knew what they were doing. But the movie was about a lot more. The movie was about I mean, they shot enough for two films. They shot hundreds of hours of stuff. And the movie was originally about the kind of the competition, the three-way love triangle between Tony and Michael O'Keefe's character, Danny Noonan, and Maggie, the Irish girl. So there was one scene. I actually auditioned for a scene that never made it into the movie. And I remember the night they shot it, it was when they couldn't figure out who was the father, because Tony, my brother, had a scene with her also that was cut. So it was really about the caddies, and that's what it was supposed to be about. The scene was brilliant. I mean, it was a fight scene, a bloody fight scene at night on the course, and they're both drunk, and it was really wonderful. Both of them were wonderful actors. But what happened was when they started piecing it together, it became not a competition, but equal time for the four comic stars, right? So to make sure that Chevy and Bill and Rodney and Ted all got their screen time, I guess. They kept in the funniest stuff and essentially cut the plot, right? So he was kind of destroyed by the fact that his vision, his script, the heart of it, he wrote a really kind of beautiful piece about these caddies and with surrounded by the comic chaos. But by the time they pieced it together, that story wasn't there anymore, which was why Scott Columbia, who played my brother, was sort of, I won't speak for him. I won't say he was devastated because I don't know. But a lot of people did a lot of stuff that didn't make it into the movie. And for whatever reason, everything that I did made it into the movie. Not because of me, but because of, you know, the scene with Bill Murray and the pitchfork. It wasn't about me, obviously, it was about him. But that's what happened is the funniest stuff made it into the movie, which ultimately made Caddyshack Caddyshack. But
I think it was because of you.
yeah, it was probably because of me. Alupa? Alupa?
Lupa.
Alupa.
Gunga Glunga.
No bare feet. No bare feet. No bare feet. No bare feet. A lot of work on that one.
I like that. What's the sign say?
No fighting. No bare feet. It was also kind of an ad lib. Even that, the whole thing was constantly shifting. Things were constantly changing. Ted Knight, who was also Ted and Doug were my two favorite people because their hearts were as big as the moon. The two of the kindest people there. A lot of people were kind. A couple of them were big fucking assholes, but most of them were very kind. And the assholes mostly had to do with their, cocaine habits or whatever the hell else was making them antsy. But uh, Ted was amazing, and he was a consummate professional. He did the same. He did a different take every time. You could tell his Mary Tyler Moore gifts came through because he could do. We shot stuff a lot because Harold was new and he had a
Mhm.
director of photography with a lot of Hollywood background, really helping him call the shots. But they would do a lot of masters, a lot of close-ups, and then another close. It was kind of looking at it now, it's almost like a film class the way it was shot. Um, but I always forget my point when I start tangentializing. Um, I don't know. You're younger than me. What was I saying?
You were saying, no bare feet. What's
Oh
it
yeah, yeah,
mean?
yeah.
No
Oh yeah.
fighting.
Exactly. So Bill, Ted had the ability to do his lines exactly and come up with a completely different take. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, I think for the movie, even though I think obviously ultimately the movie did fine, this is 45 years talking about it, they kept his most staid, stoic. They wanted him to still be the bad guy. So even though all of his stuff was funny about a Frisca, they kept the more serious stuff so that he could still come across as the bad guy. So he did stuff that was hilarious. I mean, there's so much stuff that we didn't see. But with no fighting, it was just the line as written was, "What's that sign say? No fighting. What's it mean? No fighting." And I was literally in my trailer. It says, was it the first day? No, it wasn't the first day, but it was early on. And and I had training. I mean, I wouldn't have gotten the audition if I hadn't been pursuing it. I was only 20. I just turned 20. And I'd been taking acting classes in New York since I was 13. So I knew, like, even in the pitchfork scene, the best thing for me to do was to just make eye contact as well
Hmm.
as I could and then respond as honestly, as organically as I did, which is why I kept giggling because in those days I didn't realize that. I found out later in acting class that every time I get mad during a scene or during an exercise, I would either start to giggle or I would do this thing with my hair, like push it back. And I thought it made me feel like, young actors, we're all grasping at dramatic straws. But I was like either pushing my hair back or giggling. So in retrospect, I was giggling because I was fucking scared. You can see how that thing was going. That was 7 hours of shooting that one scene. So, you know, but there was a lot of things being made. So anyway, so I'm doing no bare feet. No, I mean no fighting, no fighting, no fighting. I'm like trying to, and to me, I didn't realize Caddyshack was a comedy. It's like, oh, there was Angie D'Annunzio gets hit in the face. No fighting. And Brian Doyle Murray, who not the best relationship, he had some stuff going on. He was
He
the one who
wasn't the
said
best relationship.
he did not have the best relationship. Brian Doyle Murray, I'm not going to talk about people. It's all in the book and it's all in other people's interviews, but he wasn't the easiest person to get along with. He had stuff going on. And but that day he said, why don't you just say no bare feet? He said, what would you do if you were a punk? And I asked you what the sign said. Why would you say the thing you just did? And I was like, oh my God, that's really good. So he said, what's that sign saying? I said, no bare feet. So we kind of he suggested it and we did that and Harold loved it. I mean, there was a lot of that going on. So and also the pitchfork scene wasn't originally the pitchfork scene, but that's another story from or later.
We'll get to that. I don't know who you're making eye contact with more, Bill Murray or the pitchfork.
Well, yeah, I was looking down. I wish I had. Well, you always wish you had. It's like I thought I'd look back on all my screen performances instead of both of them and say I can see how I changed because I can look at the thing I did in Caddyshack and when I'm standing there with no film experience at all, I was just thinking what I'd learned: make eye contact, listen. If you're really looking and you're really listening, you're going to be organically responding. So, and I knew film was a lot more intimate than theater. I mean, I'd done a lot of theater by the time I was 20. I'd been a theater major for a couple of years. I'd been doing stuff. I played all the big parts, Tevye, Philly, and Chicago. I mean, I was a superstar in camp. So, Danny Zuko, come on. Um, so, for me then, it was just reminding myself to do the least I could do so it didn't look, you know, like over the top, but it still to me came out a little bit like a lupa. I still had that, I was learning. Um, but anyway, did I answer the question?
Yeah, you did. Yeah, it's funny some of the merchandise that's come out over that movie. I don't have them out here with me
Well,
now, but I got a couple of ornaments that look like the gopher dressed like Rodney Dangerfield's character, a couple of Christmas ornaments that look like him. But I also have, I found this.
hey, hold that. I'll get you mine. Wow, check this out.
Oh, yeah, we got Mr. Gopher. I'm
Yeah,
all right. Ain't
both of them.
nobody worried about me. Look at
Don't
that.
sign, or else you're gonna let it be. Who do you love?
There you
Oh,
go.
so this,
Wow.
come on, camera. Oh, wow, zoom. You call that zoom? That looks
Yeah.
like, what do you call it?
There you go.
Glaucoma channel. Anyway, um, when I went to do the 30th anniversary documentary in LA,
Hmm.
that's the first time I saw any of those guys since the 30th, the opening, 30 years previous. And Scott Columbia, who played my brother in Caddyshack, gave me his dancing gopher. So that's why I have that. He's a good guy. He's a great guy. So
There
yes,
you
you've got
go.
your gopher.
Well, I also have this is on a bit of a sadder note because I started doing this podcast in 2015. It's just kind of something that fell into me. I used to do them at the student radio station here, and I did 20 interviews in 2015. It was kind of shocking, and I've grown a lot as an interviewer since then. But one of the 20 people I had on was the gorgeous Cindy Morgan. And I wish I could have got her back on, because at the time I had a co-host with me you know, we're not doing the show together for reasons that
Yeah.
yeah, and the station also weren't happy, but anyway, I had Cindy Morgan on. I really wanted to get her on again. It never did happen. Um, I had Cindy on Facebook. I don't know what was going on with her, and it feels like there's something a little nefarious, but I don't know the details. But I did go on her website and I ordered some pictures
Oh,
and go show those. But I remember getting this message from an email from Cindy, and she was very apologetic. She says, "This is late coming to you, so I tell you what, I'm going to pay for the postage, and blah, blah, blah." Um, this was all signed by her too, all the postage stuff. But I wish I could have got her on again, but her people worked really well with me. But I got some autographs, and I'm so glad I got them. I wish I could have got her back on,
yeah.
but
Oh,
got
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, she was so gorgeous in that movie.
She was very sweet. She was very sweet. I mean, I think considering this crowd and the amount of partying and stuff that went on, there could have been a lot less humility. But for the
Hmm.
most part, everybody was pretty kind. Bill Murray was a nut job. He was impossible to connect with. He was never easy to talk to. And he nobody there even knew when he was going to show up or not. So he wasn't really,
Oh, that was like that with meatballs.
yeah, he wasn't very warm and he wasn't very interested in other people from what I could tell. Um, Chevy Chase, who's gotten a bad rap, was a sweetheart. Talent. We played tennis all the time. The tennis courts were always free because it was a golf course. And he was great. We had a blast. We went out, to dinner, and he was a very talented. I know they're showing picture of Cindy Morgan. Oh, Madonna with meatballs. She was actually. Pardon me.
Oh
I was
my
going to say
goodness. We all remember that shot of her.
she
You
was
guys
my.
all straightening up.
Yes, in more ways than one.
And I got one more. Look at that.
There she is. She looks like she's supposed to look a little bit like Lauren Bacall. That's
She
what they were
does,
saying.
yeah.
Lauren Bacall thing. Yeah, she was a lovely woman. She was very sweet. She had a cockatoo. That sounded like it was going to be weird. But she had a bird. Our rooms adjoined. Unfortunately, the door was always locked, but our rooms adjoined. And I'd pop in and we just sit and have coffee or a smoke or whatever and watch the bird fly around. She'd land on her shoulder. She was very sweet, but rumor has it she went through some other, health issues and mental health issues, and um, so who knows? Life is
Yeah.
cruel ultimately, even when it's
Well,
funny.
I'm so glad I had her on when I did, and wish I could have got her on again, but I'm so glad I got I got this back was back when I was at my old residence, so would have been pre-2020, so I was so glad to get those. I always liked Cindy Morgan, and I felt so bad when I heard about her passing, so and of course I got the Blu-ray as well.
Of course you do.
I love the documentary on this. Boy, think
That was fun. That
but
was fun. That was
one thing I heard from Cindy Morgan about though, and again I thought about this when she passed because she was trying to do a book,
yeah.
and I'm
We should
like,
have all written a book. I would have been, doing better if I had written the book already. I have so many stories, but now they're everybody's stories. Chris Nashawati wrote a book, um, kind of like the what do they call it? I can't think of the word. As I get older, my words drop like breadcrumbs. And by the time I turn around to find them, the little psychic birds had eaten them all up. But it was like the ultimate, um, oh, here I am sounding my age. And then when I was 7, I met President McKinley. Um, geez. I don't know. I forgot what I was talking about, but I know it was about Caddyshack. Where was I? Oh,
writing a book, yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, writing a book, writing. Anyway, Chris Nashawati wrote this book. I want to say the not the ultimate, but it's the standard now. It's like the really told stories that I didn't know about, you know. And I narrated the book because I'm an audiobook narrator now. That's what I've been doing for the last 15, 16, 17 years. So narrating the story, not only did I learn things about the shoot that I had never known, and this was only a couple of years ago. So we're talking about 40 years later. Um, I forgot that I was 20 years old. I've been telling people for 40 something years that I was 19 when I was in Caddyshack. Not that that's important to the annals of history, but I was astonished to find out in the book that I was 20. Oh, yeah, right. My birthday was May. We went down there. All right. So, anyway, the things you learn. But most of the stories, I mean, all the stories that we all have come to know and love are kind of in there. He did a really good job with that. So, but yeah, she was working on a book, and yeah, I don't know what happened.
I remember when I talked to her, she had mentioned we talked about all the Family Guy references,
Oh
to,
yeah,
yep, and we
I was
talked,
a good guy. They owe me money.
yep, and we talked about her other film roles like Tron, and she said she used to have a cat named Godzilla. I remember she said that, you know, and yeah, I felt bad when I heard she passed, but I was like Cindy, so honored to have had her on. Glad I have those. Um, but I know she was living in Florida there at the time, and she wanted to do a convention up here, and she asked if I could make that happen. Um, I wasn't able to make that happen. I wish I could have, but anyway, I don't know when you're in the present, like she was gorgeous in that film. Weren't you, were any of the fellows you included intimidated to be around her because she's that beautiful? Or are you just a charmer?
Me personally,
Yeah.
I was like a little brother. I mean, look at me now. I'm in my 60s, and I'm still like,
60. I thought you were 39.
yeah, exactly. So did I. And then I stood up. Um, and there were these hips that I never knew I had. Um, yeah, I mean, to me, it was kind of weird because women were coming on to me a lot, especially at the pool scene. I mean, I was 20. I looked like I was 12, 13, but I was so into the world, you know? I mean, I didn't, I never looked at her. I mean, I recognized her beauty. But I was just so in awe of the experience. She was like a friend. She was like a sister. I didn't have that. I had a really sort of immature view of adult relationships, even at 20. I mean, I wasn't, I had heard
I'm
of sex.
53 and I still have an immature view of adult
I
relationships.
think we all do. So it was really like I felt like a kid at like the most expensive bar mitzvah in the world. It was just like bowls of Coke and bongs and beer, and that was always there as soon as you got off the set. And yeah, it worked, and I was 19. I'd missed a lot of classes in college because they were early, and I was up every day. It's with the sun, and you'd be in makeup by 5 or 6, and you'd be on the set for 12 hours, and but it was like, up until then, all my biggest deal was playing Tevye in Fiddler on the Roof in camp. It was a big jump. It was a leap from Anatevka, let me tell you. Anyway, so yeah, no, I considering how many sexual escapades were available, I was really very focused on the event, of the thing. Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't know what everybody else was thinking, but when I made a joke and Chevy Chase said to me, "God, you're quick." To me, that was just as memorable as anything else that happened, because who it's like if she had said, "You're the handsomest man I've ever met," I would have been like, "Well, that's a lie." But you know, I was constantly in awe. I must have looked like thoroughly modern Millie, in New York for the everything was like everyone was like a tall building to me, you know. So
Talk about the process of getting the part, because you got I mean, I loved how the movie turned out. And yes, it looks like something where somebody just let the camera go and get a film, but I think that's part of what made it work so well, and talk about getting the part in this movie in the process. Did it take long or did you get it right away?
um well, it depends. When you're there and you're young and you've had an audition and 2 months or 2 weeks or whatever goes by, it feels like it took long. But when you look back at it, it feels like it was like less than a second later. It was. I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. Essentially, what happened was I was up at the Berkshire Theater Festival in Stockbridge, Massachusetts, doing what actors do. I was working backstage. I'd been there for 2 years. I was already in college. I was going to college in New Paltz, upstate New York. John Turturro was 2 years ahead of me. Todd Thaler, the casting director, was also 2 years ahead of me. All these wonderful actors. I could name lots of names who are all working actors in New York. It was a really wonderful theater program, and but I decided instead of doing summer repertory, which is they had a wonderful repertory theater, 3 shows in the summer. I wrote to every single summer stock theater company in the country that I could get my hands on. I got a list and wrote handwritten notes. We didn't have, computers still weighed as much as a toaster. Um, anyway, and now this was a year before in 1978 that I was doing this. So I wound up as an intern at the Berkshire Theater Festival. In 1978. I got a million stories about that. I mean, the people I met, Joanne Woodward and Tony Roberts, and the people I became really friendly with, and it was the dream. It was the dream, because I'd been at it since I was a kid. I wound up going back the following year, which was really interesting because they didn't have a place for me. I didn't get invited back to work the following year. And at that point, I easily again could have stayed at school and done a couple of good shows. And by that time, I was going to be in my junior year, so I would have probably nailed a couple of really fun major roles. John Turturro, I think, had graduated by then, so there was more room for other people who weren't brilliant. Um, but I somehow talked my way into going back. I got on the phone with the artistic director. I said, "Listen, I'll work for free." I remember saying, I was there till the last day last summer. I put away every flat. I know where everything is. I've worked in the costume shop. I've worked in the scene shop. I have a car. I can drive. So I got them to hire me for free, which was really, oh, what a brilliant negotiating tactic that was. So I wound up being the only staff member at the Berkshire Theater Festival who didn't get a paycheck on Friday, which was really fun because he had to still be at the meeting. But during the course of that summer, one of the people I became really, really close friends with, and I regret how much time has passed because his life has gone one way and mine has gone another. But we became Tom Hulse, who was Pinto in Animal House, who went
Yeah.
on to Amadeus in the film. He and I just connected. He was fucking good. I mean, he was this little, he was older than me by probably 8 years, but we looked like high school friends. And I used to write song parodies, before Weird Al, after Alan Sherman. I wrote song parodies about everything, every fucking show I did, every show I watched, every show I was backstage at. I'd take songs and write, like forbidden Broadway versions of it. So I would entertain these actors, and they thought it was brilliant. It was just something that I was good at. So I would hang out with Tom before the show. He was doing the Butter and Egg Man, a very old, I think it was Moss Hart, George Kaufman, excuse me. Anyway, he was doing a show. We became friends. I used to hang out and entertain him with my songs, and we just became buddies. And he said to me one day, "Do you want to audition for a movie?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, the people from, I had just gotten out of Animal House. That's previous summer. So he said, they're doing another movie, and they're looking for people who are nuts, who are crazy, who can party and have fun and can act and, make a scene. And I was like, I think I can do that. So he set up an audition for me in New York. And I drove from the Berkshire Theater Festival. I got the day off, a couple of days off from, I was working my ass off too. I mean, you don't, you work 7 days a week and then the turnover, you work 72 hours without sleep. And so there was a lot of work. You know, and I learned a lot, obviously. And I met some extraordinary people the 2 years I was there. But anyway, he got me the audition. I went down to New York and I met, it was just me and Georgianne Walken, who was the New York casting person who was married to Christopher Walken. And I read a couple of scenes in her office, and it was very comfortable. It was really fun, including the fight scene. The big, I said that was the audition. There was this big fight scene between Danny and. And that was it. It was lovely. I went home or went back to my friends who I was staying with, got in my car, drove up to um, back to Stockbridge, and a couple of weeks went by, and I was having a really bad day. It was getting toward the last couple of weeks of summer. A friend of mine who, this is really a long story, but a friend of mine who was kind of a pain in the ass after a while decided he was going to go to New Paltz and be a theater major also. And I was like, oh, fuck. And I kept hitting myself in the same fucking thumb over and over. I wasn't a good carpenter, which is good because I didn't get paid. But I was capable of building things that you had to tear down a week, 2 weeks later. So anyway, I was having a really bad day, and then I was actually in the bathroom moaning my fate, running my finger under the cold water. And somebody said, "You have a call. You got a call." They handed me this piece of paper I still have. It was from Wally, it said Wallace or Wally Nasita, who I didn't know who that was because she was the casting director out in California who ultimately cast it. And I got on the phone with her and she said, "The role is Angie. The rate is da da da." What? And she said, "The role is Angie. The rate is $8.50 a week." And I said, "I'm really sorry. I'm sorry. Is this definite?" I mean, I remember the moment. I remember the conversation word for word. And she said, "Yes, this is an offer." And I said, "I accept." And she said, "Okay." At which point she realized I probably didn't have an agent and my rate went from 850 to 750, which was not a good negotiating tactic. Because I said, "I just wrote down $8.50. Is that right?" And she said, "No, that would be $850." And this was 1979, I would have been happy with 25 bucks for the summer at that point. So anyway, yeah, that's pretty much what happened. Oh no, you know what? I skipped an important part. I'm a douchebag. This is what happens when you get old. It wasn't that 2 weeks went by and then this happened. A couple of weeks went by and I got a call back. That's what happened. I was asked to go back to the same office. And instead of Christopher Walken, Georgianne Walken, it was Doug Kenny, Brian Doyle Murray, and Harold Ramis, the three writers. And it was just the four of us sitting around the table. And that was it. I'd never experienced anything like that. They didn't ask me to audition. They said, "Do you play golf?" And I said, "No, I'm 20." Fucking plays golf. I played tennis. And they said, "Would you have any experience?" And all I could remember was when I was very little, my daddy used to play golf and he used to let me carry the clubs but it was mostly just chatting for like 15, 20 minutes. I was definitely a little self-conscious, but I knew who Doug Kenny was. Harold, I didn't know. A lot of people didn't know Harold at that point. Brian Doyle Murray, you know, was just a character. But I knew who Doug was because National Lampoon and all. So I was just like talking. And then jump cut ahead another couple of weeks. Then I got the call. So yeah, I'd forgotten about the callback, which was just meeting with those guys and talking. So that's how I got the part. That's pretty much it. And then what happened was we got down there, and my part was pretty much nondescript. At that point, I still have the original script. Angie is described as the rat-like D'Annunzio. And Angie didn't have much to do because Joey, the 10-year-old brother, the little one, was the one who gets stabbed with a pitchfork and jumps off the roof and gets the bathing suit pulled off and all that stuff. That was old Joey. But we got down with a couple of days left before shooting started, and they still didn't have a Joey, which I didn't know any of this. So what happened? I don't know if you talked to Minerva Scelsa yet. Did you interview her? Minerva is a Minerva Scelsa. She doesn't go by Scelsa anymore, but she played Joey. She was there visiting. She was 10 years old, I think, and she was the granddaughter of this guy, I believe his name was Hank, who was the head of the Teamsters. And I guess the head of the Teamsters had a chat with Harold or the other way around, and they said, yeah, we can cast her and we'll make it a different character. Instead of Joey being Joey the boy, it'll be Joey the girl, but we don't find that out until they're making it up as they go along. So they decided just make Joey the boy, and then when he takes off his hat at the swimming pool, all of a sudden we realize it's a girl. So it was all new. But what happened is you can't put a 10-year-old girl, in a scene where you're getting your bathing suit pulled off or where you're getting stabbed in the chest or any of that when your grandfather's the head of the Teamsters. So essentially, I inherited the role and everything
It,
that she would have done, I went doing. So it was just, there was an angel on my shoulder that whole time.
yeah, I haven't had her on. I'm wondering if because Tommy Kovac from the guy from Splat from the Past connected
Yeah.
me with you, and he said if you had anybody on from Caddyshack for his anniversary, I said no, I'd love to, and he connected me with you. I'm not sure whether I'm trying to remember. Is she the one that says you shave your ass?
Yeah. Yeah.
That is
She's
her.
actually a, she's a, I follow her on Facebook, as much as I can stand Facebook anymore. But she's
Yeah,
been
I
doing
get you there.
lovely, amazing work for people. She's a real like social justice advocate for certain groups of people, I guess. I don't know if it's the Hispanic community or I don't want to speak out of mm, ignorance,
I'll
but
have to reach
an
out because
incredible
Tommy
person. She's an
recommended her.
incredible person. And I don't know if you could get him or not, but Rob Morrow, who you must know from Northern Exposure and Quiz Show and all that stuff, numbers. He was an extra in Caddyshack. He was down there the whole time as an extra, so he has his own stories about what it was like to be an extra. He and I kind of bonded down there, and then when he moved to New York, we became friends and wound up in the same acting classes, shows together. We're still close as far as you can be after 40 years of separate lives. But he's a good one.
So tell me, were you nervous about doing the pool scene where you're don't slip in the water or whatever, don't slip in the
Hey,
water. And
Bigfoot, don't trip in the water. Yeah, I wish I could have done that better. I mean, I kept trying to keep the character like goofy, but in
oh,
those
I
days,
thought you were fine.
yeah, in those days,
Yeah.
I still thought acting meant you did a voice or something. I hadn't, even though I'd taken a couple of good classes at that point, I was still in the, oh, now I'll do this, which has paid off really well for audiobooks. I've got 10,000 people living in my head. But it was, yeah. So no, I wasn't, because when I realized that I was getting all this stuff to do, I was like, yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that. I'll do that. I do remember Harold saying, you're a little mature, which I thought was a nice way of talking about my junk and my mountain of pubic hair. Pubic hair. Um, I he said, you're a little mature to be doing that scene. He said, I think maybe we'll put you in a jock strap. I was like, okay. I mean, I never wore one, and who the hell wears a jockstrap to go swimming? I guess Elephant Man or whatever. Uh, that can be taken in so many ways. I meant it in a purely sexual way. Um, so anyway, yeah. So I was like, yeah, okay, I'll do that. I'll do that. I'll do that. I'll do that. That's great. Yeah. Um, you'll notice that in the big da 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 da, where we're all doing the water ballet, I
Yeah.
am the first one to come up. I just couldn't hold my breath as long as the other 35 people. I was like, I looked around and they're like still down. I'm like, but that's the stuff only I can see. Not very exciting. Um, but yeah, so that's I just inherited all that stuff. So it was just great fun. Great
That
fun.
was an interesting random moment scene in the pool there with them do like I like it's like it's almost like Caddyshack was being written as it was going on.
Yeah. Think? Yeah, it kind of was. Which is why Ted Knight would go nuts, because he was a consummate professional. He knew his stuff backwards and forwards and could do it 1,000 ways. But every time Chevy Chase started making shit up, he was like, God damn it. you know, Cindy Morgan was real good at following his lead. Like the clearest moment of genuine personality, human essence coming out was when he stabbed her in the back during the massage scene with he's doing shiatsu, and she looks back and starts laughing and says, "I'll kill you." That was the girl I knew. That was her. That was her personality came out in that moment. I'll fucking kill you. That was, so she was able to go with the flow. I mean, she was talented enough to take cues from the other actors because Chevy Chase, Bill Murray, they were all improvising all over the place. Um, and that's okay for this film. I mean, especially since so much was being made up as they went along. A lot of the script stayed the same. Rodney's jokes were Rodney's jokes, and but the Cinderella story. I mean, all they did was give him a putter and say go. So yeah, I mean, it was almost being invented as it went in a way. Yeah, and that's why it became such a long movie to edit.
Yeah. Um, when the scene where you're jump off the rooftop, was that you or was that a double?
It's both of us. Um, Here's what happened. It wasn't that big a roof. I mean, you saw it. It was
Okay.
literally like maybe 7 or 8 feet. That was the first day of shooting.
Hmm.
The very first day, was that the first day? Yeah, I think. I can't remember. I feel like it was one of the first days. No, the very first day of shooting was when we did the original scene without Bill Murray and without the pitchfork, when it was this random character talking about the Dalai Lama. He was supposed to be like a Vietnam vet, which kind of like who with the 1,000 yard stare just telling the story. And my job was to eat a whole box of powdered donuts without swallowing. So that was the original, and that was the very first day of shooting. I was the first scene ever shot, and they were just like, "Don't swallow, just eat the donuts and don't swallow." And that took all day, all morning, and it was apparently hilarious. I mean, the associate editor, this woman Lori, who wound up leaving early because she had a fight with the editor, who was a bit of an egomaniac, I guess. She said they loved you. It was hysterical. But what happened was this guy was too real. He wasn't funny. He just looked like a homeless guy. And so it became about me eating donuts and the funny thing, but it wasn't, it was a little, I guess it was a little unsettling. So when we shot the scene over again with Bill Murray, that was all just made up. He showed up one day on the set. The first day he showed up, we went back in and reshot that scene, and he first had us, like a death scythe, and I'm like, get that away from me. Like I made an executive decision that in that moment of fear that changed the film forever. I said, I'm not going near you with that. It was just a moment. We were just talking, and he's like, okay, and then he picked up the pitchfork, and the rest, of course, is history. But I do remember it was early on in the shoot when I jumped off the roof onto his back, and I was up there and I wanted to jump. It wasn't a big deal. It was fun. I was fucking 19, 20 years old. And I wanted to jump off onto Michael's back, but they didn't want to take chances because if I broke my ankle, that was it, right? Um, for me, for my career. So they had me jump onto a bench. They put a picnic table down there. So I was literally only jumping and landing, 2 feet later. Then they cut to my double, who actually jumped on not Michael's back, but somebody else's back. And of course, the cut was so obvious that that's why you asked the question. But
Okay.
it wasn't because I wasn't willing.
Cindy told me a story about Scott Columbia that I found interesting. She said, you said, you know how Scott got the part in Porky's? And she told the story that the script for Porky's was sent to her trailer or something like that. And I guess she wasn't going to do the film, but I guess Scott got hold of the script.
They had been dating at some point. I think they dated at one point. I don't know if it was before the movie or after the movie.
Oh, I envy him.
It was contentious. I mean, he said that there were a lot of problems, in general, but he's a sweetheart. He's still up and running. He's playing the drums and he's fighting the good fight. He was a good brother. better than my own. I tell him
Yeah, I've
that's
never had him on here, but I one thing I liked in the film, you had the back and forth between him and Michael, but there's something very real about it. And by the end of the film, they're kind of on the same path there. Yeah,
and
yeah.
also there was the entire they actually shot all that. Their relationship developed through the course of the film because there were scenes with them and about them, and they bonded in that way, and they were both good actors.
Hmm.
Um, and so that would have shown, even though everything they did up to that point was cut, you know, um, there was a through line in terms of the work they had done together, I think.
You know what's funny? There's the line. He goes, "Hey, I'm not paying no 25 cents for no Coke." And I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, wait to see him today.
Yeah, I remember when Coke was 50 cents because
Yeah, that was a
I
lot
I have a
ago.
check from Ted Kennedy Jr. When I was in the summer that actually was cast in Caddyshack, 1979. I was building scenery, and he was up at the Berkshire Theater Festival as a an apprentice. And I owed him $10, or he owed me $10, and I he gave me a check, and he remembered that I had borrowed 50 cents from him for a Coke. So I got a check from him for $9.50, which I never cashed because it was a Kennedy. That's, I think, why they have so much money, because people don't cash their checks. But he was a
There you go.
sweetheart. He was a really, really good guy. Really, the one he was the one who had cancer and had a prosthetic leg, and talk about humility. I did meet his sister, and that was my Cindy Morgan story. I met Kara Kennedy when I guess she was probably 21. She was about 2 years older than me, maybe. And oh my God, did I fall in love in one day? And I thought, are you kidding me? A Kennedy they might marry a Schlosser, but they're not going to marry a Berkrot. So anyway, that was my Kennedy story.
And going back to the pool scene, another person I've had on the show here was Ann Ryerson.
Also a lovely, lovely person
Yep.
who got totally screwed in that movie. She had so much more in the movie that wasn't in by the time they cut it out.
I was so happy to get her on here because it's funny because I knew her. I was most familiar with her from Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. She's one
What
of
is
the huh?
I've never seen it. I don't like horror movies. I'm
Well,
afraid of.
here's the thing. Friday the 13th, Part 6 has got a lot of comedy in it.
Oh, I guess they have to by that point.
Yeah, it's got a lot of comedy. Like Jason, of course, the director wanted to bring Jason back to life, but do it in a Frankenstein manner at the gravesite. And of course, he's going back to camp. During his rendezvous going back to camp, he runs into some paintballers. And one of the paintballers is Ann Ryerson. Of course, all the male executives are upset because she won the paintball game or something like that. And she's involved in a triple decapitation scene.
Oh my,
But
what a
um but I had her on here. She was so lovely to have
oh, she
on here. I got a signed picture of her too. She sent me from Jason Lives where she's pointing the uh the paintball gun with the smile on her face because she just zapped those two chauvinistic paintballers, but nonetheless, I did love the humor in that movie, and but we talked about her with the chocolate bar and Caddyshack, and of course the Jaws reference. So and of course you just had to have a piece of that. You just
give me a bite,
had to.
Joey. Would you? Joey, would you? That was my line. Hey, Joey, would you give me a bite? Joey, would you? Joey, I can do it again if you want.
She throws it in the water and goes, "Thanks a lot."
Thanks a
Poor Anne.
lot. She was brilliant. She had so much more in that film that got cut. That was all part of the whole. It was about the caddies until it wasn't.
Wow, you didn't see. Oh, um, Jason Lives is funny. It's a horror film, yes, but the director said you can incorporate comedy, just don't make fun of the Jason character.
Right.
But
It's funny.
he makes a lot of references to old monster movies, but that paintball scene, I absolutely love. I mean, Jason grabs somebody by the arm and slams him against a tree. And when his face goes into a branch, and when his face is removed, there's a happy face on the tree. Like, I'm so you can't take that seriously.
Yes, not.
Yeah. So I loved Anne in that. She's got the goggles.
She's great. She's great. She really is. She's a wonderful person. I mean, I was
Yeah.
so people that I got to work with at that age. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love the whole Jaws thing with the chocolate bar and Bill Murray with that shit-eating grin on his
Literally.
face.
That's
And
where they
he
got the
eats.
expression. So that's a shitty script. It's okay.
No big deal.
No big deal. I'm the only one that ever saw the lines from Caddyshack.
Shit-eating grin on his face. Um,
Oh.
yeah. We
And
gotta talk.
the other actors in the film were brilliant. I mean, Lois Kibbe was brilliant, who played Judge Smales' wife, and
Well,
Albert Song played
we got to talk about that because one of the things and I heard this from Cindy, and we talked about briefly about Ted Knight because she said Ted Knight was furious with a lot of the ad-libbing and stuff, and apparently it was him and the I'm sorry, the woman that played his wife,
Lois Kibbe was her
that
name.
Lois Kibbe. Yeah, apparently, those like they were true professionals. So when they come on the set there and they see all the drugs and stuff like that, this is not their world. So I understand they had a really difficult time. And Cindy gave me the lowdown on that. You got anything to share about that?
I love Ted. I can't believe he died before everyone else except Doug because he was the only one who wasn't taking drugs, which just goes to show you, right? Ted was very upset with the amount of drug use.
Hmm.
You know, what we didn't know at the time, and maybe that has something to do with it, what nobody knew was that he had already had a cancer diagnosis when he was doing Caddyshack, and he thought doing the film would be good for him. So no, none of us knew that. But I do remember one particular day when I was at lunch and there was like a cake bar, you know. Excuse me. Mm, that was last night's dinner. Yum. So I remember cutting a piece of cake and putting chocolate syrup on it and putting, I don't fucking know, M&Ms, or I don't even know if mix-ins were invented yet. It was the 70s. But I had this huge thing of cake with ice cream. And Ted came over and he said, "Oh, you don't want to eat that." And I said, "Yeah, I do want to eat that." He said, "No, no." I said, "Ted, I really want to eat that." And he said, "I can prove to you you don't want to eat that." I said, "Try me." He stuck his finger in it. He just mushed it and mushed it and squished it like making cupcake garbage until there was nothing but, a pile of like leftovers. And then he just took all this stuff on his finger and he wiped it off on the side, cleaned his finger off. And he said, "Told you didn't want to eat that." I was like, "I don't want to eat that." So I mean, he was really, really funny. He was really good. He was very kind. That's what I was saying. His lines were he had memorized them all the time so perfectly, and then Chevy would make shit up, and it would drive them nuts. Because that was, they're two different backgrounds. You got people like Ted who, had won how many enemies, excuse me, Emmys, enemas, for Mary Tyler Moore, and then you've got the Coke, addled gang from Saturday Night Live who needs scripts, right? So yeah, but I didn't know that stuff at the time. I was just doing my thing and living it up and having a great time. A lot of the scenes that those guys were in, I did, except for Bill Murray, I didn't have a whole lot to do with. Although we did do a lot with Rodney. Rodney Dangerfield was also a sweetheart. There was no difference between Rodney's persona and Rodney. He was just like that. That was
I'm
just
a
his.
huge Rodney Dangerfield fan, and I quote him a lot. You know,
Oh, sorry, quote.
I heard he had a difficulty because he was so used to people laughing at the jokes, but of course you can't do that.
Funny. It's true. It's true. He kept saying it's funny. It's funny. It's like, yeah, Rodney, but we can't laugh. We're not allowed to. It's like, yeah, it was funny. I mean, that's stuff that I learned after the fact, from the book I narrated. Um, it was quite a time.
Yeah, I was a big Rodney Dangerfield fan. I still am. Loved him in Back to School as well, and Easy Money, and even his work in Natural Born Killers. I was a little surprised to see him and huh?
I never saw that one.
Well, so Natural Born Killers, he's in that, and you hear a lot of the comedic lines, but it's a dark, dark, dark movie, you know? Like
That Woody
uh
Harrelson.
huh?
That Woody Harrelson.
Yeah. Woody Harrelson, Juliette Lewis. It's not a comedy,
No, I know. I heard it was
no,
pretty.
but there's a like when it gives a one of the characters' backgrounds and how they grew up, they cut to a sequence that's shot like a sitcom. This is I
Mhm.
Love Mallory, which is the name of the Juliette Lewis character. And of course, her parents were Rodney Dangerfield and Edie McClurg. And Rodney Dangerfield goes, what you wearing, a broomstick and a trash bag? A few pounds later, you'll be Miss Ethiopian.
Oh Jesus. Yeah, he was okay. He was funny. He was a funny guy.
Love Rodney Dangerfield. And I remember the day he passed away too, um, because I was like, now I got to go this battle on my own because I had a very low self-esteem at the time. And it was like, it's like I hear Rodney go on about himself, and I'm like, oh, this guy gets it. I'm going to tell you a story. I had Adrienne Barbeau on here that first year that I was doing interviews, and she was, of course, in Back to School. And I asked her, I said, did you give Rodney any respect? And she goes, for a guy that says he had no respect, I would show up on set and there'd be a line of women outside his trailer.
Yeah.
So I'll ask you, did you give Rodney any respect?
I gave Rodney so much respect. I gave Rodney so much respect. I have a story I can't tell, but it's funny, but it just crosses too many lines in terms of the language. But he was a funny guy, in fact, and he was very insecure. John Barman, who played Judge Smales' grandson, he and I were the
Mhm.
same age, same thing. He was 19 or 20. I was 19 or 20. Suddenly, he was from Seattle. I was from New York. All of a sudden, we're doing this thing, and we're both like, this is fucking great. And one day, Rodney asked us to come up to his room because he had new material and he wanted to try it out. And I remember the material really well because it went on to be classic material. It was, I went to see my doctor, Dr. Vinny Bombach. He told me I was crazy. I said, hey, I want a second opinion. He said, okay, you're ugly too. He told me to take up jogging. He said, I want you to jog 5 miles every day for 2 weeks. I called him at the end of 2 weeks. I was 70 miles from my house. So, we're sitting there laughing at this brand new Rodney routine. And he's like, you really think it's funny? You're not just doing this for you really like it? I was like, are you kidding me? We're like in the Rodney Dangerfield's room listening to his new fucking material. And he's worried about whether we like it or not. So yeah, it was quite a heady experience. Say.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard he was another one that Ted Knight had a hard time adjusting to.
Yeah, I don't, I guess it's very hard when you've got a lead in a film and you're trying to maintain that character and you've got people around you making shit up and there's nobody. I mean, Ted Knight, there's no one. You can't tell me he's not a brilliant at everything. I'm sure he could have improvised,
Mhm.
but he knew his lines and he had choices that he'd made and he was trying different things. But then somebody would say something else. But
Yeah.
again, I was on the periphery. We worked a lot. There's a lot of stuff with the kids. I worked steadily I was there for 9 weeks, and I had 2 weeks off, which was amazing. I had my own car. I had free money, and so it was 2 weeks of just hanging out. But then I was back on. So it's um, when I was working, you're still up at dawn and you're working till. And the other thing, the reason I was there for 9 weeks instead of 5 is because we were right under the airport path. So here we are shooting this movie, and every 15 minutes, it's like when I'm trying to record a book and some idiot goes by on a motorcycle, it's the same thing. Plane would go by, we'd have to stop. Plane would go. It just took longer and longer and longer and longer. So I was very lucky in every way. I got a part I wasn't supposed to have, and then everything I did stayed in because it was funny, and then I wound up staying there for much longer. It was really quite interesting. So
And of course, there's famously, like I've heard a lot of stories about Chevy Chase and Bill Murray about being difficult. And there's also, of course, their famous fight on Saturday Night Live where they locked horns. I think it was brilliant. I heard the story about there's one scene with Chevy Chase and Bill Murray, you know, and I heard it was totally improvised. What I found interesting is how Chase and Murray were able to move past everything and they made a great scene that one moment. And I think Harold Ramis just wanted, despite their difference, he wanted to get a scene with those two together because he said if it worked, it would be gold, you know?
And I
Yeah.
remember the day because what happened was I don't know if we had the morning off or if they were just doing like B-roll stuff, like pickups. Because Harold, Doug, Brian, Doyle Murray, Chevy, and Bill were gone for the day. And apparently the story is, and it's just the story of the day, it's like where were they? They got in a limo with champagne and Coke and weed and whatever else the hell. And they drove around all day writing this scene. They just drove around and drove around and drove around and did their thing. I don't know where they stopped or what they did. We just know they got into a limo. They came back that night and they shot that scene. So that's how magic is made, in at least in the 70s.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. Yeah, that was a really cool scene. That was a really funny scene.
And you had a good working relationship with Chevy, huh?
I love Chevy. Chevy and I were kind of buddies. He was very down to earth with us.
I was always a big Chevy Chase fan,
He was very
I got,
cool.
yeah.
He was normal. He like when you're dealing with all these people, everybody was pretty much awesome. There were a couple of people, like I said, who had drug problems, or I mean, everybody was using them, but not everybody was an asshole about it. Most people were extremely kind. It was like Animal House. It was like a big family party.
Hmm.
Um, um, but so Chevy was just really cool. Like I said, we played tennis all the time because the tennis courts were free. He was a really good tennis player. He took a couple of us out to dinner one night. Local restaurant. It was me, John Barman, um, Hamilton Mitchell, who also passed, unfortunately, who played
Was
Motormouth.
he Motormouth?
Yeah,
He
he
passed?
got a cancer about 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry to hear
and
that.
Scott were really, really good friends. They for a long time. He and Scott Columbia, but he and John and myself and Scott, the four of us went out to dinner with Chevy, and really nice little place. I remember for me, it was the first time I had blooming onion rings, so I thought that was the big highlight for me. But he got up and played. There was a piano there. He would just get up and improvise jazz piano, and he was a brilliant jazz pianist. He was really a good musician. So all of my experiences with him, playing tennis, hanging out, him telling me how fucking quick I was on, when it came to humor, all that stuff was really, really swell. Bill Murray was a cipher. He's brilliant, but you'd walk into a room and you just feel like the air was thicker. Like he just didn't interact in a healthy way with other people. He
Yeah.
was always his own thing. And that made him less appealing because when you meet people and they're humble and they're kind, like Doug Kenny, the humblest person there, Um, I remember drawing some doodle in college when I was tripping for the first time. And I don't know why I had it. I had a lot of notebooks because I wrote a lot. And it was just a doodle of an electrical outlet with a cane and tap shoes or something. I said, not a very creative outlet. And he said, that's more clever than anything I've ever written. And I said, no, it isn't, but thank you. It was that kind of thing. Most people were just really so happy to be there. But then, then it's also other people who are like in the movies and they're bringing their whole personality with
I heard too, talking to Cindy was talking about the scene at the piano with Chevy Chase and how Chevy Chase was she
them.
said you can see the moment where she knows the camera's rolling and she just has to go with it, you
Right.
know? I love it. And every time I see that scene, I'm like, now I get it. And she's reacting. She went with it. She
That's right.
went with it.
That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. That scene where he's doing the massage roll, that was all improvised.
Yeah.
And and of course we weren't there because it was, naked back and stuff. But when she turned around and said, "I'll kill you," I was like, that was her. That was a moment that I knew was not scripted. And it was so much her personality. It had nothing to do with the character, except it was really her. And that's why I love that moment.
I love the opening of the film too, where it's, you got the apartment or the house or whatever, the family. I loved how natural that is, where the mom's going around telling everybody to get up and this big, big family, there's something very, very, very natural about how that was shot, and I love that. And of course, Michael O'Keefe comes down there and goes, had a couple of Cokes or something for lunch. He goes, how many Cokes? And he says so many. He goes, what are you trying to be, a diabetic? You go, I don't know. But Michael O'Keefe, of course, the lead caddy in the movie, and he has some great stuff with Chevy and I'll be the ball. You're not being the ball, Danny. Talk about Michael
Danny every
O'Keefe.
day. Good. Yeah, there's a lot of improvising. He was also right on. He's a brilliant actor, also, so he's right on. His scenes with Chevy. Anything Chevy would say, he was there like immediately. It's just a lot of improv, which is fun. It's really fun to do that. I did that in a film once where I just had to like, be there, be present, go with the flow, respond, and you know that there's shit going on around you, and you're just there.
I love that line. He goes, I'm going to end up, I didn't tell my parents about the scholarship I didn't get. I'm going to end up working the lumber yard for the rest of my life. And Chevy Chase is like, what's wrong with working the lumber yard? I own 3 lumber yards. He goes, I know it's like you don't spend a lot of time there. He goes, not sure where they are.
Yeah, I think a lot of that was improvised. Not all of it. I mean, I've got the script. I know what's in the script, but it's a blueprint.
Another name I got to bring up, because this is tragic as well, and I touched on it with Cindy. Sarah Holcomb, whom I loved her in Animal House. She's carted brought home in the shopping cart. She's like, "Ee." And of course, there she's got her hair all cut, and she was a lovely woman, very attractive. She doesn't make it so obvious, but she's very attractive, and I really liked her in Caddyshack too, especially that little dance at night where she's going around that pole, and
She
you
finds out
know,
she's
what was it like with her, and can you speak to anything about what's going on with her? Because
all I can say about that. I have to check on the time. I hate to be
you
professional.
just yeah, just let me know. Yeah, we'll let
I'll
you.
probably pretty soon because I thought it was an hour. And I'm coaching a woman. I coach narrators or people who want to narrate their own books, and I'm coaching her
Mhm.
in about 40 minutes. And I need to do some stuff in
Okay,
between. So the only thing I can tell you is that without telling tales out of school, is she was dating
sure.
Brian. She was very aloof, to be honest, because she was dating Brian, and Brian was one of the writers and one of the producers, and Brian, I hate to talk about it except the fact that everyone already knows it. I mean, there was a lot of cocaine on the set. Um, Brian, as far as I knew, and had a love of cocaine and alcohol that didn't quite mix, and I think the two of them. This is stuff also I found out afterwards.
Yeah,
And from Scott and things that happened after I left and things from the book. But they were very connected. Like he took her to Ireland on a trip just to teach her the accent. It's like, sure, write that off, right? Um, I couldn't do an accent and I never got to go to Ireland. But anyway, so I think they were very connected. And she didn't, as far as I was concerned, I didn't really exist. She was aloof, but she was friendly enough. But there was some kind of toxic stuff going on, I think, there that seeped out a little bit. And the only thing I know is that she had mental health issues later on in life, and that was part of the reason she sort of dropped out of sight. I had a weird. I'm not going to talk about it because it's too long.
That's
But
okay.
the night that I left, I was really sad because there were 2 more weeks left, and they were all going to Boca, and I was going home. My work was done, and it was late at night. I was going around room to room to say goodbye to everybody, and Brian was just lit into me. Was out of left field. All he had to do was say goodbye, and I would have left. But he started going off on me about being a pain in the ass, and talking too much, and always trying to do. And I just like started crying. I couldn't know. I didn't know what's fucking going on. And then Sarah was like, "Yeah, he's kind of right." And I'm like, "What the fuck is going on?" And then Scott Columbia saw this, came out, and started threatening Brian. Like, "What the hell are you doing? Why are you talking to him like this?" Well, all I know is that I thanked Scott and I left and I went to sleep and I went home the next day. And then later that year, at the end of '79, Ted and I had hosted Saturday Night Live. Did I
Okay.
say at the end of the Saturday Night Live? And I got a ticket. I was a guest at the show, not on the show, but at the show. And after the show, it was Christmas. So Brian was backstage with a big sack, and they were just filled with socks. He was giving out socks to everybody for Christmas. He gave me a couple of pairs of socks, and he said he was sorry for that. So he remembered that, and I was grateful. But I found out later on when we did the 30th anniversary stuff, and we were all hanging out in LA together, that Scott had was up all night with him. That crazy shit went on that night. So yeah, I can't say that she was much of an ensemble person. She really mostly hung out with him, and so that's really all I know. But otherwise, it was amazing.
I liked her in the shopping
Oh,
cart, though.
oh, sure.
I'll
One item or less.
ask you about a couple other people too. Henry Wilcoxon, the bishop, of course. Bill Murray had stated on the Howard Stern show that his career went back to the silent movie days.
Oh yeah, he was
Yeah.
the original Mark Anthony, I think. Was it Mark Anthony? Yeah, it was the original Mark Anthony in Cleopatra with Claudette Colbert in the '30s. And it was that's another thing about Doug Kenny. Of all the people that were there and everything that went on, Doug Kenny said he was so nervous about meeting Henry Wilcoxon because this guy was a star of the silent screen of the,
Yeah.
you know, he was a, and there he was in his like late '80s or whatever, and just charming as hell. Yeah, he's a sweet man. I didn't interact with the adults who didn't live at the hotel. Lois and um, Ted and Henry and Dr. Beeper. I mean, a lot of those people just had places away from the main hotel. The hotel was kind of like Animal House campus.
Yeah, I
So
was going to
all the
bring up Dan Razin, who played Dr. Beeper. I heard he's no longer with us either.
Yeah, I didn't really have much of a relationship with those guys because
Yeah.
we were in like one scene together that made it onto television, but not into the movie. Hey, it's the Beep and the Bish. There he is, Dr. Beeper, blah, 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 whatever. Um, yeah, but I'd say I was closest to Ted, to Doug, to Scott, um, and was lovely. Just a sweet, funny, gentle, humble soul who got ripped off because she had so much more in the movie that just all got cut. Scott's stuff got cut, her stuff got cut, Hamilton's stuff got cut, and I was just in the right scenes at the right time.
And of course, you got the scene where uh, you're trying to distract Michael O'Keefe shot and Ted Knight pulls her out of town.
And you know what sucks? That was one take. We had it planned. Ted turned to me and he said, I want to try something because we can do something. Like he wanted me to have more of a part. He was like, I want to do this thing together. And I said, okay. I said, what do you want to do? He said, well, when you're doing it, I'm going to pull your hat down over your face and then you can react to it. I said, okay. So we shot it once and he did it and it kind of worked like it was just sort of like a rehearsal. It was that we were usually doing like 3 hours of the same fucking shoot and we would cover so much, and that's why it took so long. But what happened was Michael had been practicing a lot. He was a consummate professional. He lied
Mhm.
about being a golfer when he had the audition, but then he took golf lessons so that he would. And he got the first fucking putt in. They shot the scene. He got the putt in. We did the thing, and Harold went, "It went in. Let's print it. Move on." And Ted was like, because we were going to do something bigger and better. So it was like I was going to do something, and we were going to make it a real thing. But all we had to do, that one moment was just it was the first time trying it, and then it was like, oh, okay, that's it. Move on.
It's funny seeing Ted Knight in this movie where he's playing the angry antagonist, and then you see him in Mary Tyler Moore and he's playing the buffoon, I never realized because I saw Caddyshack long before I saw any Mary Tyler Moore stuff. And it's like it's interesting the comedic range he had.
It was brilliant, brilliant, great
I mean,
guy.
even the stuff at the desk there, and I saw this on Family Guy where he pushes the lamp off the desk,
Right.
you know?
Oh,
Yeah.
Frank.
Were you at the premiere?
I was. I was. I remember the premiere well because what happened. I mean, I'm going to make this the last story because I really have to prep for
Hmm.
this. I'm coaching someone who very interesting. She was in charge of security at Logan Airport on 9/11, and she became a scapegoat.
Oh,
She wrote a book, and now she's looking to narrate it herself. So I got to get some stuff ready for her.
sure.
But um, first of all, I wasn't invited, which was really fucked up. So I walked in. I was a real punk. I mean, not a Tony D'Annunzio punk, just a like Jewish young kid who had no clue what the business was about. I walked into the executive offices at Warner Brothers, and I said my invitation got lost in the mail. I've been on the phone with California, and I never got my invitation. I'm in the movie, and it's tomorrow night. And they were said, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," and they gave me a ticket. So that's how I got my ticket. I went to the premiere. The first thing that happened, I got there. I'm such a doof. I'm wearing my tuxedo T-shirt. I was all big into funny T-shirts, right? So I'm wearing jeans and a tuxedo T-shirt. I go to the theater, which was 1500 Broadway. This was a New York premiere, and there is Cindy. She's just walking out, getting out of a car or something. And I went up to give her a big hug, and she hugged me, and I hugged her. And some See You Next Tuesday reporter grabbed me and said, "Hey, no way, we're working here." And I'm like, I'm in the fucking movie. Take your hands off me, please. I didn't really say that, but I was like, really, it was really fucking rude. I never been in the way of fucking paparazzi before, and they just shoved me out of the way. And I said, "Excuse me." So that was my first intro. Then we got into the movie, and everybody was there, and it was phenomenal. I had such a great time, and of course, I didn't realize that Scott and Hamilton and Anne were all sitting there then going, where's everything I did? They cut out that whole plot. And every fucking thing I did in the movie was there because it was with Rodney. It was the pitchfork. So I was thrilled because I had this massive part in this major film, and this was 1500 Broadway. My ass was about 80 feet wide when they showed that in the pool. That was the worst part. My anus looked like the fucking Lincoln Tunnel. I was like, Jesus Christ, is this what it means to be in movies? But afterwards, I was like, yeah, this is amazing. And the two people that I had invited were Barbara Clayman, the president of BCI Casting. And again, I walked into her office. I went past her secretary, sat in her office while she was on the phone in this massive corner office. And she said, "Hi, can I help you?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm in a movie that's opening downstairs tomorrow night. Do you want to come?" And she said, "Sure." I mean, how nice to not know what you're actually supposed to do. So she came, and another woman came, Yvette Bickoff, who wound up being my agent. And it was great. And I wound up at the party was phenomenal. I drank a lot. We all did. It was um, the party was at the ice skating rink at it, by Saturday Night Live by the Rockefeller Center. And I wound up basically hanging out all night with Chevy Chase's kid brother and two of his friends. I remember just partying all night and winding up in this really shitty, normal New York apartment on 8th Avenue between like 10th and 11th, sitting on the fire escape at like 8 in the morning, smoking a joint. And I'm like, that was a party. And it was. And I gotta go. I really have to run. I didn't I didn't anticipate. I've got yeah, I've got this woman I'm coaching at 3. I've
You
got
know what? I'm going to let you go, but before I let you go, would you mind doing a plug for my show?
sure.
Just state your name and say you're listening to Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise.
Hi, this is Peter Berkrot from Caddyshack, and I am listening to Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise.
Thank you so much, Peter, for coming on here today. This has been a delight, and I wish you the best of luck in your voice work as
Oh, I knew
well.
there were 2 things I wanted to tell you because if I ever want Canadian citizenship, I have to throw this out there. I've left a lot of DNA in Canada, and I would like to come back and claim it if we don't get another president soon. Um, my best summer of my life was at a camp in Toronto, not Toronto, but north of Toronto, a place called Manitowabing Sports and Arts Center. That was the
Mhm.
year that I played Uncle Smellicue in Dark of the Moon, which Doug Kenny thought was hysterical when he saw my resume. And I played Danny Zuko, and I lost my virginity at that camp. I was 17 years old, and I was seduced by a chorus girl. I won't tell you how old she was, but she had a whole lot more experience than I did, and she was Canadian. So that's my first take to why I belong in Canada. I've left a good deal of DNA there. And I also left other DNA there 5 years later when I had my hernia fixed at the Shouldice Institute, where they had just created a new hernia um, 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 operation, a new procedure. I had had a hernia when I was in 8th grade and had it done in New York, and it took years, a couple of years. I'm an idiot. A couple of weeks to really be able to move again well. But in Canada, at the Shouldice Clinic, they kept you awake through the whole thing. They gave you plenty of drugs so that you didn't feel them doing the hernia, but you were awake the whole time. You got up and walked off the operating table. And by that night, you were walking down 3 flights of stairs to get your dessert. It was a hospital just for hernias, pretty much. It was kind of the Disneyland of hospitals because nobody got sick and nobody died. And when you made people laugh, they ran away because it really hurt because they all had stitches in the same place. So, having donated both blood, sperm, whatever other bodily fluids I could have offered, um, and a little bit of neck blood from the pitchfork. Oh, that was actually Florida. Sorry, that's the F word now. I would like to say that I am probably um, worthy of Canadian citizenship, and I would
I
like to know
agree.
anything to say about that. I just wanted to share that because I was very excited about the Canadian connection, and that's
Absolutely.
it.
Well, you have yourself a wonderful day and God bless you. And thank you for allowing me the honor.
Thank you. And I'm
Absolutely.
gonna go get running. I probably have to change the cat litter now.
All right. Take care, man.
Cheers. Thanks,
Yeah.
man.
Bye bye.